Hello and welcome back to Out of Spec Reviews. This is Wyoming, Minnesota, which is a city and a state, by the way. And this is Polaris R&D, kind of the headquarters. It's a huge facility, over 600 acres, over 1,200 employees, and 16 miles of trails where they do development testing and where we'll be doing some experiential riding. We are here for the brand new Polaris Ranger XP Kinetic. It's a long name, and it's all electric. Actually done by a partnership with Zero Motorcycles. We'll get into all the nerdy tech specs and details, and we'll do a ride along, interview with one of the lead engineers. We have a lot to cover, so before I hand it off to Max, we're rolling the intro.
Thanks for the introduction, Jordan. I'm Max, by the way. I'm new to the Out of Spec team as a producer. We don't know where Kyle is. He might be anywhere between San Diego and Colorado. We're hoping that BMW iX made it. But today, of course, we're here for that XP Kinetic that you introduced as well. Before we're gonna take it off-road on their test course here, we're gonna look at this pristine, clean model in front of us. I'm just gonna walk you through some of the specs. So right off the bat here, price. This is the elephant in the room here, I think, with the XP Kinetic, because, well, it is pricey. It's $29,999 for that ultimate trim with 2 of those packs, which gives you 29.8 kilowatts hours of gross capacity. And it's $5,000 cheaper if you get half size capacity, so the 14.9 kilowatt hour pack. Those are giving you 45 and 80 miles of range respectively. So decent range, and in terms of the actual price, it is more expensive than a normal XP1000, the gas vehicle. It's actually comparable in price to, let's say, your North Star Ultimate trims, your crew cabs. Of course, you don't get those fancy options yet on this. They're only doing this as a 2-door electric model at the moment. So if you come around with me, well, we'll just take a look at it. I suppose that Polaris is kind of making a similar bet to Ford here with the F-150 Lightning. They're kind of taking one of their bread and butter models, the Ranger, the XP one, specifically the 2-door one, and electrifying it in a fairly kind of, not too rock the boat way. That said, this is exciting. So this one actually has a detached front panel we can see, so we can see some of the wiring here. Of course, it's not an ICE vehicle, so this is not any of the actual engine or motor components. This is just wiring and electrical stuff here. Some goodies, no frunk, unfortunately, but you know where to change your wiper fluid if you need to. So if we actually look around, this one conveniently is just all opened up. There is plastic here. We actually got a tour inside of how they fabricate some of these parts. This is all 3D printed, really cool. But basically under here there is a motor. Not any motor, it is a Zero Motorcycles motor from some of their faster bikes, generating 110 horsepower and 140 pound-feet of torque. So nothing to sneeze at. That makes this significantly faster than an XP1000, the gas equivalent. More than enough faster to offset its increased weight. It's only around 200 pounds heavier. So you're getting similar towing capacity, you're getting marginally more bed capacity, 200 pounds more. So it's similar. And if you're not familiar with side-by-sides, think of this guy as like a little mini pickup truck. You could use this as a tooling around vehicle on your ranch. Of course, you've got a hitch. You've got a ton of accessories you can option. Here they've got a nice winch handle. And all of these accessories are almost all carry over from the gas model. Like I said, this is very similar to that gas model in terms of the actual vehicle part of it, the chassis. There are a few new things. So the headlights, in addition to having these cool blue accents on the paint, are really bright. I think Polaris told us they're the brightest in the industry. I'm inclined to believe them. They seem to get very, very bright. Let's see if I can actually turn them on right now. I don't know if this one will work or not. There's the lights. You can see them. They're pretty bright. They're nice LEDs. Interesting point of note here. There's 12-volt power in here. However, it's not even your standard cigarette lighter. This is standard if you're a side-by-side enthusiast or you know Polaris. This is kind of in their ecosystem. That said, personally, I'm a little bit disappointed not to see a 120-volt outlet. I know, of course, that's not a normal configuration from, I don't know, a motorcycle, which this powertrain is taken from, so I get that. But given that we've got the F-150 Lightning with the Pro Power on board, I think it would have been really nice to see. Another note of technology is, well, this model right here, it's the premium, the $25,000 spec one. There's no fancy touchscreen. There's an instrument cluster, but no touchscreen. However, if we go over to the ultimate trim, $5,000 more expensive. One of the benefits you get, in addition to that doubled battery capacity, is a touchscreen with Ride Command Plus, which is Polaris's newest, well, infotainment for their side-by-side. So if Jordan comes in the cab with me, you'll see that basically this displays your speed, of course your compass navigation for your hardcore overlanding, your charge status, your temperature, for a lot of things. They get very nerdy. It looks like maybe the motor controller there, the battery, the motors, that's kind of cool. You can see your voltage, your estimated range, the drive mode you're in. There's some shortcuts here to go between things. So here's some navigation. Hopefully this is not proprietary location data we're showing on screen, but that'll actually, you know, show you where you are. This is also accessible from the smartphone app. So there's not a phone here, but basically there's some smart integration. I think they said you're going to get 3 years of this free. So you get waypoints, navigation. You can, you know, track back to your charger at home. 3 years of that free. After that, you're going to have to pay $100 a year for access to this system, but it's pretty cool. Looks like some of the other riders are still out. Here's some settings that we can display here. So, you know, fairly standard controls like your display brightness, your drive modes, which you can configure on the screen, or if you're old school, you can do it down here. If we go back to that kind of settings screen though, we've got notifications, nothing new here. We got cameras, which I guess are an option. So you've got a backup view on this. That's kind of cool. I didn't know side-by-sides had that. There's a front camera that might not be working at the moment. But yeah, a lot of options here. Pretty flexible system, pretty simple, you know, doesn't need to be Tesla or Rivian grade. I like it. From everything I'm seeing about this Ranger, it seems to me to be a very convincing side-by-side. But of course, the real test is gonna be, well, overlanding, off-roading. That's what Jordan and I are gonna do. And then we're actually gonna get very in the weeds, very nerdy and in-depth by talking to one of the engineers at Polaris who developed this, to talk about what that was like working with Zero motorcycles and all of that fun stuff. So stay tuned.
Let's do it.
Sweet. All right, how's it going, Jordan?
It's good, man. Always good in an electric vehicle.
I know.
I feel like I'm in a little baby truck.
We basically are in, you know, the baby F-150 Lightning here.
Yeah.
We're going up some sand to start. No problem with the traction on these tires. And what are we looking at in terms of the powertrain on the Ranger XP Kinetic, which we're in?
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of Zero, which everyone knows I'm a fan of Zero motorcycles.
Yeah.
They have their quirks, but I think Polaris saw that Zero's had 15 years of experience, and instead of starting from the ground up, they reached out to Zero. So this is a ZF7510 motor from a Zero motorcycle,
Yes.
which people should acknowledge from being in the SRS and the SRF. So their newest, latest and greatest, really sweet. It is air cooled, but you know.
The motor controller, they said, is liquid cooled, so
Yeah.
there is a small radiator there. But what they said they've done is they've added an auxiliary fan to cool the motor in the rear.
Yep.
So the motor is basically sitting kind of under the bed here. So for those who don't know, you know, the Ranger, these ATVs, like Jordan was saying, these are kind of baby pickup trucks basically. They have the capability to go off-road. There's a bed. This one is rated to carry up to 1,250 pounds of stuff in its bed, which is pretty cool. And 2,500 pounds of towing, which matches the gas equivalent to this.
Yeah.
Wow, this is quite the grade we're going up just to start on this course.
This is a fun course.
Yeah.
I mean,
How are you enjoying the acceleration and modulation from the motor?
it's just easy. It's like a go-kart, but we're just, you know, off-road.
Yeah.
Driving this makes you just want to have a ranch.
Yeah.
So I feel like if Kyle drives this, he's gonna speed up his plans to start out of spec range.
Out of spec ranch, it's happening once Kyle gets his hands on this. And Polaris, you heard it here. You got to send us one.
But really good powertrain calibration. I mean, the pedal feel is very linear. You have that instant torque down low. I mean, it kind of feels similar to a gas one. And I think that's another comparison, not to like overly compare this to the Lightning, but Polaris took a pretty safe approach. They took the Ranger XP 1000, that's, you know, apparently one of the best sellers.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why this is the first one of their products they electrified, but I mean,
This is the two-door one specifically, right? We're not in the crew version.
Yeah. So I guess they sell a lot of these, and I mean, they took the safe approach. They basically copied the gas version. They didn't start with some crazy ground-up EV.
Yeah, to the point that I believe they told us 95% of accessories for the existing gas version will carry over. So obviously the differences will be stuff related to the drivetrain, which is, you know, out of a zero essentially.
And that's the same mentality Ford took with the Lightning. They wanted everyone to keep their same cab and box accessories.
Arguably, this is even safer because the Lightning, right, has the independent rear suspension. This is, I think, basically an identical suspension setup, very similar transmission setup. It's not a CVT though, it's a cog belt to the motor. So I don't know what you're noticing there, but that should result in some smoothness, I think.
It is really smooth. Really good regen too. I mean, you don't want the regen to be too crazy because you're on so many slippery surfaces.
But basically there are 3 drive modes in this, and like many EVs, as you'd expect, that affects both your sensitivity to throttle, throttle's not the right word, acceleration, and your sensitivity to regen. So the more aggressive ride modes will have more regen.
Just doing a little drifting here, don't mind me.
Woo. As these dust clouds.
I don't love the steering ratio. It is really, like, what's the term, long? Like, it takes a lot of input. But I guess
this is your first time driving a Ranger, right?
Yeah.
So I think the gas Ranger's probably similar.
Yeah, I'm sure it helps with really slow, specific type maneuvers. But at speed, that does make it a bit of a challenge to control.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, like in Polaris's lineup, the Ranger, like this is kind of a, like Jordan was saying, this is a workhorse vehicle. This is like their F-150. This is not an off-road beast. They have the Razor for that, right? They have other vehicles. None of those have been electrified yet. This is their first electric vehicle. Sorry, not their first period electric vehicle, their first high-performance electric vehicle. There was an earlier version of the normal Ranger as an electric car, but that had lead-acid batteries.
Yeah.
So this is quite a step up into the future for them.
It's just so fun. I mean, you don't have to think about, not that you really have to think about the transmission on the gas one, it's just a CVT, but not having to wait for it to rev up, it's just instant. Yeah. Which, I mean, that's what we all know and love about electric powertrains, and that's what I love about Zero motorcycles. Yeah. You don't have to think about the gears or the shifting or being in the right power band for the right maneuver. It's just always there. Yep.
So this is really cool. I guess this is the course they use when they're, you know, proofing all of their in-development products. We're probably going to see some things today we can't tell you about, but it seems like, you know, if I were a betting man, I would say this won't be the last electric vehicle that Polaris makes.
Yeah, you know they're working on everything. Everything's in the pipeline. They just can't really talk about it. Zero can't really talk about it. But that's fine. That just means we get to keep coming out and finding new things and sharing them with the world.
I know, yeah. Here we are doing some light rock crawling as we get into this forest part.
This should be fun. And there's basically, what, drive, neutral, low, and high. Right now I'm actually in low gear. So it's still the, not the CVT I mean, but the four-wheel drive system, which has been proven. That's why they didn't re-engineer it.
It's nothing fancy yet. It's a clutch-based system, so you're not looking at a dual motor setup like you see in a lot of on-the-road electric vehicles. Which is, you know, probably good, keeps the price down relatively. This is still an expensive vehicle, but like you were saying, like, you know, you're paying a couple $1,000s extra to get a substantially upgraded powertrain. Because XP 1000, which I think starts around $21,000, that has an 82 horsepower, 999 cubic centimeter motor, with, of course, the CVT, all the issues of an ICE engine.
Yep.
So this bumps you up from 82 horsepower to 110, right? It's the zero, and 140 pound-feet of torque. And in my opinion, the torque is the big difference maker.
It's class leading, apparently. We'll see how this torque works right here. Just having that torque low down is what really helps. It does have a sport mode, which is funny, right? It has Eco Plus, Standard, and Sport.
So we are in the most aggressive mode right now, Sport mode.
Yep.
And of course you have your high, your low gearing. I'm not sure what exactly that's doing since this is a cog belt. I guess it's just changing the, you know, input sensitivity of the motor for that low speed. And I think that's where, aside from the torque, which Jordan mentioned, the big benefit of electric here is going to be that low speed, because as you know from looking at electric vehicles on the road, in a city they're more efficient because of the lower speed. Similar situation here. You're going to get your best range, your best efficiency in this kind of Ranger when you're at those low speeds.
Yep.
So as fun as it is to give it the beans off-road here, let's say you're towing your, I don't know, potatoes or whatever it is farmers do. you should get a lot more efficiency with this Ranger. So now we're in Eco Plus.
Now we're gonna try Eco mode to eke out extra range in case we need it.
Yeah, let's say, you know, you're stranded on your property or you're about to be stranded. You got to make it back to your home base on the ranch, so.
I can already tell you it takes a lot more throttle to get some movement.
Interesting. Something else cool or stopped here is there's these switches. So there's the drive mode switch. There's your classic two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, you know, clutch switch. And then you have an auxiliary 12-volt toggle. So this vehicle does have 12 volt in the back. You could use that for farm equipment and things, and you can toggle that off and on in the cab. So that's cool.
So Eco is extremely different as far as the pedal response.
How's it?
It takes way more input to go any speed at all.
Interesting.
Which makes sense. I mean, you're trying to eke more range out, and it's actually, it's not like it's not fun. It's just, now I went to the mindset of cruising around my ranch instead of racing around my ranch.
Right.
This is beautiful out here.
I know, gosh. I don't know if the cameras will do it justice. It's just so beautiful and lush. And that's something about an electric powertrain too. Polaris loves to talk about how they see the quietness as a benefit to their customers, right? If you're out in nature, you want to enjoy it. That's controversial. I think there will be some people who are into the gas Ranger who will be turned off by the fact that this makes no engine noise.
Yeah.
I mean, we're hearing the motors right now, right? It kind of sounds like a big RC car.
Yeah, I feel like it wouldn't be a huge detractor. Like, electric cars, they're just so quiet because you're really working with pavement and noise, and they're trying to work every way possible to cut down the NVH.
Yeah. And
versus this, you have still the rawness and the differential working, and like you're still hearing mechanical things. It's just not the motor sound.
yeah. And speaking honestly, you know, neither of us have driven ATVs a lot, but I imagine if we were in the Ranger XP 1000, we might be yelling a bit more, struggling to kind of be able to hear each other. I feel like I'm talking a pretty normal tone, and it's very audible.
Yeah, it's really just like the helmet we're trying to talk through.
Yeah.
So now we're in standard mode, and by the way, we're in high gear now, and it just, that feels nice and quick.
Yeah.
Like I would honestly, I think most people are just gonna get in, leave it in standard mode, and live with it. Never change it, which I think would be fine. It is funny how easy it is to change the drive mode.
We do have a touchscreen here, right? Like this is Ride Command, this is their new system.
Yeah.
But we've got these shortcuts, so I can go between like a speedometer display, the navigation. We're actually set up in a group according to the Polaris rep, so we're able to see their cars right here on the GPS map. So that's cool.
And we left at about 95% state of charge, and we're down to what? 89?
Yes, 89.
You really can go a long time.
It's estimating 64 miles of range right now. So given that we left, you know, not quite full and what we've done, that's not far off from the 80-mile figure they're quoting.
Yeah.
Which I think is with a little bit more conservative riding than what we're doing now.
I have also barely touched the brake. The regen is really solid.
Nice.
But now that I'm off the brake, it does creep forward. I do like the LED tails and headlights.
Yes, we can see the tail lights on the one in front of us.
Through all the dust and everything.
And the headlights, I mean, even in broad daylight, I think they're probably doing something for visibility. I think Polaris told me these are the brightest units they've ever put.
They said they're the brightest in the industry.
Brightest in the industry, yeah. So that's the cool thing about LEDs, right? Like, they just make everything brighter. They're distinct. Also, the front light bar on this functions as a charging indicator.
And they're LEDs by standard, right? They don't even have halogens?
Standard LEDs. I mean, granted, of course, you're paying minimum of $25,000 for this, but hey, yeah, cough, cough, zero, putting in those halogen turn indicators. Not so with Polaris. You get all LEDs.
Nice. But it's funny because we did some research, and the power to weight ratio on this is actually similar to that of the Lightning.
Similar to that of the base Lightning,
yeah.
Right? It doesn't quite get up there with the Rivian, like the launch edition, right, that we have, that Kyle owns, but you could compare it to a Lightning. It overall is light enough. I think it's very similar in terms of pound-feet in terms of horsepower per curb weight.
The brake is very touchy, which that could be normal Ranger, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's cool though about Ride Command Plus as well though is you can set waypoints so you don't get lost, and you can also set where your charger is on your ranch. So basically you can drive around, and if you're getting close to the limit, your vehicle can be like, hey, you better head back to the charger because this is how far you are from your charger.
Yeah, there's some intelligence there, which is really nice to see. It's worth noting though that you're going to get 3 years of that free with the vehicle. Then I think they expect you to pay $100 a year after that.
Yep, not always free. So cabin comfort, how do you feel about these seats?
Nice seats. I think you can get a heating option, right? A heating accessory for this guy?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so you can get an insulated cap, and that is separate from the gas model. They said because it's a electrically operated, right? You know, it's off of the lithium-ion battery system. It should heat up noticeably quicker. Woo-hoo! How did that feel?
That was fun. You can tell my steering wheel is not perfectly aligned.
Not exactly on center.
But that whine is really impressive. Now we're what, in sport mode? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Sounds like the future.
See, still a lot of noise, but it's awesome, and it's not fake.
Yeah, that's something to know. It's not Dodge. You're not blowing out anyone's eardrums here, right? But for you noise enthusiasts, there's a noise here, just a different noise.
So I'd be curious to see what this is like before they did some of the NVH improvements, because they added some noise kind of deadening materials above the bay where the motor is, and then also even in this roof right here.
Yeah, and you can see it. I mean, it's a felt material here, basically.
So I wonder how loud it would be without that.
One wonders. All of the sound that was hidden previously by the engine on earlier Rangers.
That's really pretty fun. Like
Yeah.
I said, I think I could go for a ranch now.
Yeah.
Buying this is a lot cheaper than a ranch. But that's it for the kind of first drive of the Ranger. It'd be great to go one in Colorado, do a lot more testing with it in depth. But I don't know, what do you think, Max?
I'm impressed, you know. This is, I think, both of our first real experiences in a side-by-side period. So I'm reasonably impressed, and it's expensive, you're paying for it, but this powertrain, being at a zero, is pretty nice.
Yep.
So right off the bat, I just wanted to talk about what inspired Polaris making an electric side-by-side, because, you know, the auto industry, of course, there's a lot of talk of mandates and just the general industry being pushed towards electrification. That's where things are headed. With side-by-sides, that's not really the case. So I guess what inspired Polaris to kind of embark upon this?
Sure, Polaris has always been on the cutting edge of innovation in the off-road space. So as we see new products, new technologies in off-road, we want to be the first to adapt it and lead the industry in that area. And one of those things is electric. So we really see the benefits to both our consumers, but also obviously the environment that electric brings. And so when we set out to build the Ranger XP Kinetic, it wasn't just to build an electric Ranger, it was to build the best Ranger that we ever had before.
Great. And so if we talk about just the kind of details of the XP Kinetic, right, it's a zero powertrain from a zero motorcycle that you guys have adapted and tuned into. Basically, it's under the bed here, right?
Correct. Yeah, so we took Zero's 110 horsepower, 140 foot-pounds of torque motor that they use in some of their motorcycle applications, and we specifically adapted it to the off-road space. We were able to take that motor, and through a cog belt, we coupled it to our existing driveline on our Ranger XP 1000 gas vehicles, and that was able to give us the performance characteristics that we were looking for.
Great. So a lot of things carry over. All-wheel drive, for instance, it's not dual motors. You have that same motor, the same clutch system, right, that's on XP 1000.
Yeah, so a lot of the components do carry over, very similar chassis, suspension, wheel and tire packages, but the driveline is slightly different. So we don't have CVTs or we don't have rubber belts, but the motor is coupled directly to the transmission through a cog belt, similar to our Indian motorcycles.
And in terms of that gear ratio, it's just basically a fixed gear, simpler sort of transmission.
Right, so you get the variable speed and torque of the motor versus transferring that power through CVTs like we do our gas vehicles today.
And Jordan and I saw off-road that, you know, that motor does have a very progressive torque curve, which was really nice when rock crawling and, you know, doing basically everything you could do with a Ranger. In terms of capacity, you guys actually, I guess you benchmarked XP 1000, same towing capacity, a little bit more bed capacity. right?
Right. So this vehicle has 1,250 pounds in the bed versus 1,000, and that just allows you to work that much harder with this vehicle. So like we talked about, that linear torque curve, especially during slow speeds, allows you to haul a little bit heavier loads and get more done around your property.
Great. We're looking at a premium one, right? So that's basically the default, the smaller battery. It's 14.9 kilowatt hours. You also offer one that's double that. So those batteries sit essentially under here.
Correct. So on the premium vehicle, the battery basically sits just rear of the center and passenger seat. And then on the Ultimate version, it has two of those batteries. So one behind the passenger seat and then one directly under the driver's seat. And of course, with those larger batteries comes longer range. So the Ultimate has a roughly about 80 miles of range, and the Premium has about 45 miles of range.
And these are cells similar to what Zero would use in their motorcycles. So they're like flat pack style lithium-ion cells.
Correct. Very, very similar cell configuration, cell architecture. We made some minor changes adapting it for to this vehicle, our architecture, and our environmental differences. But for the most part, a very similar cell geometry.
Great. I know there's a lot of plastic and stuff in between, but could we lift the bed and just see the motor cover and all that?
Absolutely.
Great. So inside, my biggest question is, you took a motorcycle powertrain, granted a very fast one, and you put it in a side-by-side. What were some of the challenges of adapting that, of configuring it so it would make sense here?
Sure. So there was a couple things. We had to figure out how the motor is this hump right here, 110 horsepower motor. So we had to figure out how we couple that with our driveline. So we ended up doing that through the cog belt. We also had to change the gearing in the transmission to accommodate those horsepower and torque differences. And then also figure out where all the ancillary components go. So where does the motor controller, where does the charger, where does the DC-DC converter? And thankfully on Ranger we have quite a bit of space once you remove the exhaust, engine, and CVTs on this vehicle. So that gave us a lot of real estate to work with as we were packaging those components.
Great. And does that change the center of gravity or any of the handling dynamics of this Ranger?
It does. So packaging these components as well as the batteries, it actually lowered the center of gravity by 1 inch. Mm-hmm. And then we were able to retune the suspension. This vehicle is slightly heavier than the gas variant. So we retuned the suspension, and with that lower center of gravity, this vehicle still handles extremely well.
Yeah, I was surprised actually looking at it. I think it's like a little 200 pounds, maybe slightly less heavier than the gas XP 1000. Which I guess I was surprised by, but when you said you were able to remove a lot of those ICE components, so
correct,
offset the batteries.
Yeah, give or take, it's about 200 pounds. The batteries are fairly heavy, but then you get rid of your fuel tank, your cooling system, your exhaust, and quite a few other components, and that helps balance it out.
That's great. And in terms of the maintenance story for customers, does it look simpler? What does it look like in terms of getting their Ranger serviced if they get the Kinetic?
Yeah, extremely low maintenance. So the majority of the components are life of the vehicle. The main two are the rear transmission fluid and then your front diff fluid. Other than that, it's for the most part maintenance free.
That's pretty awesome. And there's also a 12-volt power output here, right?
Correct. Yeah, so we still have the 12-volt. Now that charges off of the main power. Mm-hmm. So as you plug the vehicle in, it charges both the 100-volt and the 12-volt system. Mm-hmm. But what that allowed us to do is use quite a few of our other existing accessories that are powered off 12 volts today.
That's awesome. If we get in the cab here, maybe we can take a look at the switch gear and stuff. So that 12 volt we were just talking about, we can actually toggle that in here, which is a nice feature. So you can do that from the cab. You guys also made the decision to basically put forward and reverse on the stock here, which is a little bit different from the gas Ranger. Is that just, making it more convenient?
It is. So you think about quick forward back motion such as plowing, or maybe even trying to turn around in tight quarters like a barn. Mm-hmm. And what allowed us to easily do that is to turn the motor forwards and backwards, mm-hmm. right? So you're not shifting gears. So it's really taking one motion out of that shift lever. So if you're doing something like plowing, you can leave it in low and then just flip that lever forward and reverse and very quickly change from forward to backward. Works pretty well.
The other thing, Jordan and I noticed when we were riding, I know Polaris, you put in some more NVH here, right?
We did.
That's because I guess the vehicle is quieter overall without the 999, cc engine. So Was that just, noticing that there's more noise when you remove the engine, wanting to create a little bit more of a insulated feel?
Yeah, I would say a little bit of both. So the air intake system as well as the exhaust covers up a lot of different noises in the vehicle. So when you remove those components, you start to hear different things. For example, you hear the tires on the gravel, you hear wind rushing over you. So we included things like the headliner. You can see some additional insulation back here.
Yeah.
And then that's one of the additional, or one of the reasons we did the close-off panel in the back, was just to help improve the overall NVH of the vehicle.
Great. And as I understand it, 95% of accessories, the vast majority carry over, but there are some bespoke ones here, like you've got that electric heater as an option for the cab, and that's going to heat up the cab quicker because it's electric?
Absolutely. So like you talked about, the dealers already have 90% of the accessories in their inventory. So as soon as these vehicles hit the dealerships, they can be fully accessorized right away. But the heater that you mentioned, we're not waiting for coolant of the engine to heat up prior to getting heat in the cab. So using electric heating elements, you very, very quickly, it's almost instantaneous heat, and you start getting that benefit as an operator on those cold days.
Yeah, that's great. And we can see this is a smaller battery model, but if Jordan looks over here on the camera, it's showing us our battery state, our gauge, our, of course, speed, and then our regen or power status. So what kind of influenced how you displayed this? Well, I know we're not in the fancy one with the Ride Command touchscreen, but we've got our instrument cluster here. What inspired showing your regen and kind of displaying that to the driver here?
Sure. So we wanted to take our current heads-up display that we have on our gas models, and the customer really seems to, it has ease of readability, and they tend to really like that display, but we wanted to make it EV specific. So we went through all the different features and telltales on the display to make it just a lot more applicable and helpful to the rider for the EV application.
Yeah. It seemed very clear, and I was impressed too about how the battery capacity seemed to be holding up even with aggressive riding. So I think you said 45, 80 miles depending on the battery pack size you get. So that's great to see. I'm guessing things like the heater will knock that down a bit in cold weather climates.
Yeah, cold weather climates, the heater if you're running some other accessories, and then of course it's dependent on driving style.
Right.
If you're doing a lot of high-speed running, fast accelerations, towing, just like a gas vehicle, you're going to get a little bit lower range.
All right, so premium model, right, the 14.9 kilowatt hour base pack, that I'm assuming is a gross figure for the battery capacity, right?
Correct, it is. So there's, it's roughly 90% of that, give or take, so just right around the 14 kilowatt hours, or excuse me, kilowatts per hour. And then on the larger Ultimate vehicle, we've got 29.8 kilowatt hours, so it would be slightly less than that, call it 28.
Great. And you're quoting the 45 miles of range versus 80 miles of range. I can figure 80 miles, it's not a linear double because it's a heavier battery. In terms of getting those range figures, there's no standard EPA test cycle for side-by-side, so how do you guys go about that?
Sure, so we took a lot of customer data that we have, so we instrument vehicles and we let customers drive them around for a period of time, call it 6 months or a year, and that's why we develop a lot of our drive profiles. And so we looked at that data from gas Ranger vehicles and found that mid-speed operation on gravel, so your typical, say, farmer or rancher application, is where we started. So I think it was right around 18 to 20 miles per hour on a gravel ride surface.
So in terms of charging, you guys are going with industry standard. That's good to see, right? It's a J1772 in the US, it looks like.
Yep.
So what does it look like in terms of I know it changes based off the model you get. So what's the range of inputs you can give this?
Sure. So it comes with standard with level 1 and level 2 EVSE. So depending if you've got 110 or 220 power at your residence or where you're charging. And then the premium model comes standard with a 3 kilowatt onboard charger. You can buy an accessory additional 3 kilowatts to bring it to 6. And then the Ultimate vehicle comes with a standard 6 kilowatt charger, and you could add an additional 3 kilowatts to make it a total of 9. So depending on if you're on 110 or 220, you could charge the vehicle in as little as about 3 hours.
Great. And I imagine, so some of the customers that you're looking at, that are getting this for their ranch, they'll already have level 2 infrastructure set up.
Right, so if they have a 50 amp welder, or if they have some other EV that they already own, you can use that same infrastructure to charge these vehicles. Otherwise, we partnered with a company called Qmerit, and they work with local contractors that have been vetted to come and install a level 2 charger in your building and get you all set up in a short period of time.
Well, I know a lot of people, I mean, you guys are sold out currently on direct to order on the site, but in terms of, getting an XP Kinetic for people who are interested, what does that look like in the next year, the next few months?
Sure, so we're planning right now to start shipping these vehicles in early 2023, and then we do plan to open up another order window, probably mid next year, that customers could go to their dealer and potentially place an order.
So as Brent pointed out, this is the EVSE that it comes with. Of course, you can see a NEMA 1450 outlet right there. You can also plug it into a standard 110, 120 outlet, and it will charge in various lengths over different types of charging configurations. It's nice that they have this little grid here to show you, but basically pretty much overnight, no matter what standpoint. Because like you said, not many people are gonna really be running this completely dead. So half day out in the farm or the ranch, and then you get back home and charge it up over lunch. I mean, I don't know. Range anxiety is an interesting conversation topic. It's very pertinent for a lot of people who daily drive EVs. This is a slightly different animal. You use way less range when you're creeping around, which is what most people have used these for. But that's kind of that. And of course they use Qmerit to help with the installations, as Brent said. So that's really been it. A fun day out here on, I guess you could say, Polaris's ranch, their test ranch. And it's quite an interesting vehicle. Can't wait to see what else they bring to the table, because obviously they have the Razor and the Slingshot, which I forgot existed until we pulled up here. I still think it's ugly. Indian motorcycles. I mean, there's a lot of technology being developed here. Wish we could show you more. They had a lot of things under covers on the tour, which we weren't even able to film on the tour. Maybe someday we can. But thank you for joining. Let us know what you think of the Polaris Ranger XP Kinetic. Yeah. And would you buy one of these? As an EV enthusiast, it's an interesting weekend toy. Now I kind of want one, and I kind of want a ranch.